There is a man in Genesis who has no father, no mother, no genealogy, no record of birth, and no record of death. He appears out of nowhere in chapter 14, performs a priestly blessing over Abraham, the father of faith, accepts a tithe of everything Abraham owns, and then vanishes from the text. He is not mentioned again for 1,000 years. And when he does reappear, in Psalm 110, and then extensively in the book of Hebrews, the New Testament uses him to make one of the most extraordinary theological claims in the entire Bible, that Jesus Christ is a priest not after the order of Aaron, but after the order of Melchizedek, a priesthood without beginning, without end, without genealogy, eternal. His name is Melchizedek, and he is one of the strangest, most theologically loaded figures in all of Scripture. Today we're going to look at who he was, what the Bible actually says about him, including what Hebrews says, which is far more than most Christians know, and why this ancient, unnamed priest matters for understanding the identity of Jesus in a way that most churches never explain. The first appearance of Melchizedek is in Genesis 14, 18, 20. 3 verses. Let's read them carefully because every word matters. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. And praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. 3 verses. And look at what they contain. He is king of Salem. Salem is almost certainly an early name for Jerusalem. The word shalom, peace, is embedded in it. He is a king of the city that will later become the center of Israelite worship. He is priest of El Elyon, God Most High. Not a regional deity, not a Canaanite god. El Elyon is used throughout the Psalms as a name for the God of Israel. Melchizedek is worshiping the same God as Abraham. He brings out bread and wine. In a context where covenant meals, sacrificial offerings, and priestly ministry are deeply significant, bread and wine are not casual hospitality. They carry weight. He blesses Abraham. And here is the key. In the ancient world, the greater blesses the lesser. The priest blesses the worshiper. The elder blesses the younger. When Melchizedek blesses Abraham, the text is making a statement about their relative standing. And Abraham gives him a tenth of everything, a tithe. The act of giving a tithe to a priest is an act of recognition, an acknowledgement that this person holds a position of spiritual authority over you. Abraham, the man to whom God had given the covenant, the promises, the land, gave a tithe to Melchizedek. That is extraordinary, and Genesis records it without explanation. Melchizedek disappears from the biblical record after Genesis 14 and does not reappear until Psalm 110, one of the most quoted psalms in the New Testament attributed to David. Psalm 110:4, The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. This is remarkable for several reasons. First, God is speaking this to someone David calls my Lord, which creates a grammatically unusual situation. David the king is acknowledging someone as his superior. The New Testament uses this verse extensively as evidence that the Messiah must be greater than David. Second, this person is declared a priest, not a king priest in the Levitical sense, but a priest in the order of Melchizedek, an order entirely separate from the Levitical priesthood established through Aaron, an order that predates Sinai, an order whose defining characteristic is that it has no genealogical requirement, no tribe, no hereditary succession. Third, and this is the most striking word in the verse, the priesthood is forever. The Levitical priesthood was mortal. Priests were born, they served, they died, and their sons took over. The Melchizedekian priesthood does not work that way. It is permanent, eternal, held by one person without end. 1,000 years after Genesis 14, God is still pointing to Melchizedek as the defining template for a priesthood that had not yet been fully revealed. The book of Hebrews devotes more attention to Melchizedek than any other New Testament text. Nearly 2 full chapters, 7:1 through 7:28, and what it says is extraordinary. Let's go through it carefully. Hebrews 7:1-3. This Melchizedek was king of Salem and priest of God Most High. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of the kings and blessed him. and Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. First, the name Melchizedek means king of righteousness. Then also, king of Salem means king of peace. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life, resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. Without father, without mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. This is not the author of Hebrews speculating about who Melchizedek was. He is drawing a deliberate theological argument from the text of Genesis. Genesis does not give Melchizedek's father. Genesis does not give his mother. It does not give his birth. It does not give his death. In the biblical world, where genealogy is everything, where every significant figure is introduced with a lineage, the absence of all of these things is not an oversight. It is a statement. The argument Hebrews makes is this: in the Torah, when something is not recorded, it is as though it does not exist in the legal sense. Melchizedek, as far as the Torah is concerned, has no beginning and no end. He simply is a priest in an eternal, non-hereditary order, and he resembles the Son of God. The Greek word used is a homoioumenos, made like, resembling, a copy of. Hebrews is saying that Melchizedek is not the original. Jesus is the original. Melchizedek, appearing in history before the Levitical priesthood was even established, was a foreshadowing of the eternal priest who would come later. To understand why Melchizedek matters, you need to understand the problem the author of Hebrews is solving. The book of Hebrews was written to Jewish Christians who were under pressure to return to traditional Judaism, to the temple, the sacrifices, the Levitical priesthood. And the author's argument is, Jesus is not an inferior substitute for those things. He is their fulfillment and their completion. But there is a problem. Jesus was from the tribe of Judah, not Levi. The law of Moses required priests to be from the tribe of Levi, descended from Aaron. Jesus cannot be a Levitical priest by genealogy. So how can Jesus be a priest at all? The answer? He doesn't need to be a Levitical priest. He is a priest of a completely different order, an older order, a greater order, an order that predates Moses, predates Aaron, predates Levi, predates even Jacob. Hebrews 7:11. If perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, and indeed the law given to the people established that priesthood, why was there still need for another priest to come, one in the order of Melchizedek, not in the order of Aaron? The Levitical system could not produce perfection. It was always temporary. The sacrifices had to be repeated year after year. The priests died and were replaced. The system was a shadow pointing forward to something that would finally accomplish what it only gestured at. And the proof that the Levitical system was always incomplete? Psalm 110. Written 1,000 years after Aaron, David declares that God has appointed a priest in the order of Melchizedek. If the Levitical priesthood had been sufficient, why would God be pointing to a different order? Theologians and scholars have proposed three main answers to the question of who Melchizedek actually was. View 1. He was a historical Canaanite king-priest. The most straightforward reading: he was a human king ruling Jerusalem who worshipped El Elyon and held a priestly function alongside his royal role. The fact that he has no genealogy in Genesis is simply because Genesis doesn't provide one. His ancestry was not the point of the text. This is the dominant view among most mainstream scholars. Under this view, what makes Melchizedek theologically significant is what his appearance says. Even before the covenant with Israel, God had a worshiper in the city that would later become the center of Israel's worship. Abraham was not bringing God to a new place. God was already there. View 2. He was a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. Some early church fathers, including Origen and Ambrose, argued that Melchizedek was not merely a type of Christ, but was Christ himself, appearing to Abraham in human form before the incarnation. On this reading, the lack of genealogy is literal. He had no human parents because he was not human. This view has fewer modern defenders, but it explains the force of Hebrew's language. Resembling the Son of God could be read as the author pulling back from the full identification to avoid confusion. View 3. He was an angelic being. Some Second Temple Jewish texts, including the Dead Sea Scrolls document called 11Q Melchizedek, present Melchizedek as a heavenly figure. a divine being who serves as a heavenly priest and judge, superior to the angels, who will execute judgment at the end of days. In this reading, Melchizedek is a cosmic figure whose appearance to Abraham is a visitation from beyond the human realm. None of these three views is without textual support. What they share is the recognition that Melchizedek is not an ordinary person. His appearance in Scripture is deliberate, loaded with theological significance, and designed to point forward to someone greater. Here is the point the book of Hebrews is ultimately driving toward. Jesus Christ holds a priesthood that the Old Testament system always pointed to but could never achieve. A priesthood that is not based on genealogy, not limited by mortality, not subject to repeated sacrifice, not dependent on a temple building or a ritual calendar. Hebrews 7:24-25. But because Jesus lives forever, he has a permanent priesthood. Therefore, he is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. A permanent priesthood. He always lives to intercede. This is what Melchizedek's mysterious, genealogy-free, death-free appearance in Genesis was pointing at all along. The eternal priest. The one whose ministry does not end when his term expires, because his term never expires. The one who does not need to be replaced, because he cannot die. Melchizedek, whoever he was historically, was placed in the text as a marker, a signpost pointing forward to a priesthood that the Levitical system could not contain and that the Mosaic law could not establish. 3 verses in Genesis, 1 verse in Psalms, 2 chapters in Hebrews, and a figure who has occupied theologians, scholars, and curious Bible readers for 3,000 years, without a definitive answer to the simplest question: who was he? Maybe that's the point. A figure with no beginning and no end, whose identity remains open, pointing perpetually forward to the one whose priesthood is actually eternal. The Bible is full of figures like this, characters who appear briefly, raise enormous questions, and point beyond themselves to something larger. Melchizedek is perhaps the most dramatic example. If these are the kinds of corners of Scripture you want to explore, subscribe to Bible Radar. Every week, something in the text that most people have never slowed down long enough to see. God bless.